Okay, hello. Thank you so much for joining us today for a Where's Your Focus vidcast. We've got a few of us today that are going to be talking about domestic violence in honor of Domestic Violence Awareness Month coming up. So I'm Jennica Haywood. I do a multitude of things, but basically my focus is transmuting and healing deep wounds that cause our reality to it affects our reality on our day-to-day basis. So by diving deep into our own being, I facilitate the healing and growth necessary to be able to come into the fullness of who you are and be able to express and experience the fullness of your potential. Next, we've got Asia.
Hi, I'm Asia Rain, and I'm excited to be here. I'm also really excited that there is other, furry friends with us today. I'm a silversmith, and I facilitate learning and growing through creative arts such as jewelry making. I'm also a facilitator for healing memory regression, memory recovery, and helping others really understand and know more about what it is that is deep inside of them so that they can learn more of who they are and live in that powerful state. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Patricia. I'm really excited to be here today. What do I do? Oh man, I do a lot of things. I wore my cowboy hat because I've been labeled, I guess, by the angels as the cowboy. And I'm the one who comes in and kicks the butt of all the stragglers who aren't doing their shadow work. Those are the ones that I work with. It's very challenging, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun. So I do a lot of listening because these are the people who have denied that they even have emotions, basically. So I have to kind of listen to what they're saying and be like, oh, there's one, oh, there's one, oh, there's one, and kind of call them out on it. And I call them out, and it's not pretty, but usually it's because it's time sensitive for some reason or other, and they need to be kicked in the butt, and that's what I do. I enjoy it way too much sometimes. But I try and make it fun. I try and make it light because it's very, very, very dark, but it works. And yeah. So I'm the cowboy. And I bought this hat in Mexico, and I didn't even know it actually has the all-seeing eye on the back of it. And I didn't even realize it when I bought it that it was there. So it was definitely for me. Yeah. That's it. I'm done.
You're a hard act to follow, my dear.
I'm sorry.
My name's Melissa. I run Pine Tree Path Wellness, which essentially is drawing in people to draw out their trauma and get rid of it. That seems to be the majority of what my calling is lately. I've also worked really closely with a lot of herbology and a lot of aromatherapy as a way of healing, not just with energy work, because I do a lot with tuning forks too. But the vidcast is what I'm most interested these days. It's really nice to work with you ladies. Nice to see you. And it's nice to get this subject out there because though everybody knows about it, it's kind of one of those things that's still very hush-hush in our society, and it's time to start essentially calling it out.
Wow, I love that. Absolutely. And as you guys listen along, please feel free to share this with anyone that you feel like would benefit. As you can tell, we're all well-versed. Oh, excuse me. well versed in this world of healing and growing and detangling from the mess that sometimes we find within ourselves. So as you watch, if it resonates with you, please share, please comment. We're going to be watching the comment section as well, so that you're able to engage and enjoy the conversation along with us. So thank you, and we'll get right to it. At least after the intro video. Should be popping.
The intro video is there to introduce other members on the panel and give people that are a little bit new to or familiar with the vidcast just a little bit more information, I guess, just kind of show everybody how many people are part of this this panel. So it is just kind of an introduction to the panel, and we're just kind of waiting for that recording to show up here. Oh, I guess we're not doing that. That's okay. Well, we don't need to jump into it. Just know that there are many people on the panel. So the four of us that you see right here, or even the five with Karen as being part of the screen that you see there. There are, gosh, I don't even know how many, but we keep adding. There's more healers and more intuitives that are coming on to this vidcast. So it's really beneficial to tune in as you can and as you do. You may even think about somebody that is very interested in a subject. Oh my goodness, there's like over 20 of us now that you might want to share with somebody else. So if the domestic violence awareness subject that we're talking about today really appeals to, or you can think of somebody that this may benefit, then by all means, there's going to be a recording. This is recorded. You can share with them afterwards, or you can just let them know that there's other subjects all the time. And there's quite a history too. If you come to the vidcast page, then you can actually go back in history and see what the different subjects and topics are. And they all last about an hour, so you can actually stay with us for about an hour and interact and send questions, and then even reach out to individual practitioners and contact them if you've got further questions or if you want to work with them. So it's really kind of a beautiful interweaving of community. But today, as we're gathering, we're speaking about and speaking to the subject and the topic of domestic violence. And next month, October, is a recognized domestic violence awareness month. And we're kind of pre-waving that to give people awareness, let them know that that's coming up, and then also just kind of opening the conversation of what that's like, and maybe just give people courage to be able to speak to it in a way that allows them to be in their space of that. We are all in different places with it, whether we're supporters and observers, or whether we actually have experienced or are currently experiencing something that actually does qualify for domestic violence. So in the United States, domestic violence awareness is October, and in Canada, it's November. But it's not just like limited to that particular month. It's going on all the time. And I, in this panel, I'm not sure if we each have had experience with it or how this is working, but I do know that this it can be a really kind of tender subject. And from my own experience in relating to this subject, it's been a thin slice, I would say. I don't have like a lot of like years and years and years of what I would recognize as domestic violence, but I do know others that have years and years and years of being in a domestic violence situation. And a lot of times they didn't recognize that that's what that qualified as, that the treatment that they were actually receiving or the relationship they were actually in very much qualified as domestic violence. And so I would like to open it up to everybody, just say, like, let's jump in and let's start talking about what this is, what you've seen, what you've recognized. I know Jennica has some very specific input with that. And I'm just turning it over here. Let's start.
Oh, well, I'm open. I'm an open book with this subject. um, I haven't quite felt out exactly where I feel like opening the conversation would work out well, but I feel like right now the poll right now is just to set the preface and the premise that there's no judgment here. Domestic violence is extremely tricky. It's extremely difficult when you find yourself in that situation. And from my personal experience, your awareness, sometimes your awareness doesn't fully open to exactly what's going on in your situation. So I just want to, clearly, heart to heart, really state that there is no judgment, that your process is your process, that there's a lot of misunderstanding and lack of knowledge base, at least when as I was coming out of my own experience and regaining my kind of coming back to who I was, regaining my sovereignty through this process of exiting my relationship at the time. And I guess I'll give a little bit of a backstory, but I was in this relationship for about 3 years. It began very differently than the way that it ended. And somewhere in the middle, I completely lost myself. And getting out of something like that is extremely terrifying. There's a multitude of layers and facets between fear, shame, guilt, love, so much love. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people don't understand or haven't really had a experience with this. It's very easy to look at the victim in the situation and go, you should leave. It's completely obvious. Like, why would you let someone treat you that way? Or don't you want better for yourself? Just leave. It seems so simple. And I just, from where I'm standing, it was the least simple thing I I've ever experienced. And there tends to be phases of recognition, phases of accepting, phases of realizing that that love can still exist, but that it does not excuse and justify actions being taken. I'm kind of just flowing with this emotion, so I'm hoping it's making sense as it's coming out. But I think that was my first call. My main point here is that there's absolute and full understanding and love and acceptance. And if there is anyone that is experiencing this and just wants an ear to listen to, where that there's not going to be any ounce of telling you what you should do or where you should be or what's easy or what's not easy. It's never black and white. And learning those shades of gray is it's a whole other journey that I've also been on myself. But I'd love to hear from you guys as well. And yeah.
I think the shades of gray comment is really, really important, because when it comes to domestic violence, the title itself sounds really heavy. It sounds like it's way over here. And yet, as you were describing, the journey of getting to what you recognize as that very violent experience is, you don't just go from, hello, you know, do you want to date or do you want to be in a partnership to, you know, violence? And if it is, you know, if that happens, then that's a whole different situation. But I don't think that qualifies. I know that I've got, have a really good friend that has been or was, he's in law enforcement, used to be a detective, and he would actually be the interviewer of the rape victims. And even in something that had been reported that was as violent as rape in that situation, it was very common for the women, he was usually, you know, interviewing women, for the women to say, well, I mean, he's not that bad all the time. It just really tends to lean towards like, yeah, I'm sitting here with a black eye, but you know, I can see where it came from. And, you know, and it gets messy. It gets really messy. And as Jennica commented and pointed out, from the outside, somebody that is not in that relationship can look at it and go, okay, so there you just reported a rape and you've been beat up, and for safety reasons, you know, you need to leave. And even in that case, if they choose it to do that, a lot of times they're right back. And it's a confusing, from the outside, it's a confusing thing because it's so enmeshed, because the messiness of that and the emotional, you know, ties that are there are so intertwined. And it doesn't just start with that relationship. There's a history, there's a backstory for both people in this relationship, but there's something that has actually brought this forward to be where it is. And empowering people in a domestic violence relationship, I believe, really kind of starts with awareness. But I'm, you know, like, where does that awareness begin? Like, when you get to a point where you wonder if you're in a violent relationship, or you wonder if something's off, you know, what happens then? How can we support, or how do we support ourselves when we actually are able to ask those questions? Like, I wonder if I'm in a violent relationship. I wonder if this qualifies as domestic violence. You know, that question is a massive question. And again, that's not at the end of the I'm extracting myself from it. That is somewhere in this journey part. So just because somebody actually is able to ask that question doesn't mean they're ready to walk out the door.
Okay, I'm going to step in just for a minute. Okay, domestic violence, and I get the violent part, but domestic abuse isn't only violent. There's emotional abuse, there's psychological abuse, there's spiritual abuse, there's all kinds. You don't have to be punched in the face to experience those same emotions. I'm like, the violence is physical, but there's still the other three components that are spiritual, emotional, and mental. In my experience, I was in 2 marriages, both of them abusive. The first one was 10 years. It probably would have gotten physical had I stayed longer, because that's definitely where it was headed. But I didn't heal any of it and jumped into another one. And that one was 25 years. 25 years. And I stayed because I thought it was my job to save him. But really, after I've healed all of this and I see it for what it wasn't my job to heal him or to save him. We actually had a contract where it was his job to make me a stronger person for what I have come here to do, which is to be the cowboy. And he didn't do it because he came here to be an abusive person for me personally. When you're on the other side, before you come here, we all have contracts with different people. Our contract, he contracted to be the asshole not because he hates me, but because that's actually how much he really loves me. He agreed to be the bad guy so that I would come out stronger, so I can do what it is I need to do now. So that just kind of sheds a whole different light on it. I'm not saying by any means stay for 25 years and put up with it. I mean, I should have left. I should have taken my child and run a long time ago. But I was looking at it as, oh, I need to save him. He needs to be, and he wasn't the one that was supposed to be saved at all. It was actually me all along. And you can't save anybody else anyway. Everybody has to save themselves. I was actually going to university and I was studying sociology and psychology. I studied inequality and I studied abuse. And that was how I discovered, oh my God, I'm in the middle of this. I am in an abusive relationship. Now, what am I going to do? And actually, when we split up, I didn't leave him. Well, I mean, it had all fallen apart, but he was the one who actually left me. And it's the best thing he ever did for me was be an asshole and leave me. Like, I'm serious. When I put it all in perspective now, and it's like, oh my God, my thing is he's still broken and I'm not anymore, but it's still not my job to fix him.
Absolutely. Well, and it goes to show too, I mean, hindsight really is 2020, but the process when you are walking every single day through the process of whatever that is for you, in the realization, in the, what do I do now, in the pain and the shambles sometimes that you end up in, the journey is always yours and it's always right. Whether it takes 25 years or 5 years or 15, the journey is always right. And it is always there, or it's always going to be building a strength within you that may take some time to discover. I mean, in my relationship, I didn't experience the physical aspect of abuse yet. It was similar where, I'm lucky with where I got, where I wasn't the thing being hit, was other things in the house, but the emotional, psychological, spiritual abuse, it took me away from me. It completely separated my inner knowing, my wisdom, my core of who I am. And it's like it severed it. My throat chakra went up and I was not connected to the rest of my body. And the process of realizing that and moving through it and getting out of it, I mean, it's always intertwined and weaved beautifully in with the love that can be and is there, with the foundation you've created together, with the things that you're working on and the dreams that you're dreaming together and the things that you're wanting to work towards. Again, this is the shades of gray, as it's never black and white. It's not, I love you and now I don't. The entire process is so full of, thoughts of like, well, this is how a relationship is. Relationships are not easy. They're not easy. So this is the one I need to fight for because I truly care for this person. And, they say the same thing to me. And whatever the situation is, it is always perfect in the process that you're going through and everything that you choose, whether that's choosing to go back again, whether it's choosing to leave for the first time, whatever it may be. From my experience, the number one thing you can always give yourself and the people around you that may be going through this kind of experience is love, support, and the knowledge that they will always, or that you will be there for them. Being cut off from so many people that were close to me, because that is one of the main markers of abuse, specifically domestic abuse, is having relationships severed in the name of keeping the relationship alive. There's just a plethora of ways that happens, but sure enough, finding myself without friends or the same friends as my partner. And hadn't really talked to my family in a long time, and if I had, it was very briefly. I wasn't sure, a big aspect was I wasn't sure if I was going to have people outside of this little pocket that I was allowed to work within, based upon my partner's parameters, otherwise, causing a huge fight and some sort of explosion. I knew I was very lucky that I didn't have to question whether or not my mom would be there for me, whether or not my brothers would be there for me. They were exceptional, even with very little communication, at letting me know that I was always loved and that whenever I was ready or whenever I needed them, they were there. And even though it took me a couple, years longer than what I would have hoped, that was the number one most important thing, is that when I would go back, when I would re-enter into this relationship, they weren't holding it over my head. They weren't saying, we know he's terrible for you. We know he's treating you bad. If you go back, we're not talking to you again, furthering my isolation and furthering the disintegration of anything that I could rely on outside of this partner. So another extremely important thing from my perspective is, if you know someone who is going through something like this, don't begin giving them ultimatums. They already have enough of it in their relationship. They need to know that if and when they get the strength to leave, they have someone there that is going to meet them on the other side and not beat them up in the same fashion their relationship is doing it. That's where that emotional, psychological comes in. You don't need a guilt trip on the other side. This is so difficult, and that's already a day-to-day. Just love them and tell them you're ready for them when they're ready. You're there for them when they need, and send them love from afar when that's the only thing that you can do, because sometimes that is the only thing that you can do. Oh, just very, very important. Melissa, I'd love to hear some thoughts from you. And I see that Sandra is joining us. I want to say hello. Thank you for joining.
It's a really heavy subject, especially for someone like myself who has been lucky enough to not have witnessed it firsthand. I have unfortunately been I'd say mediator, or the go-between between said abusive couple. And it's the amount of manipulation was astounding. And it's not I see a lot of it as just a control tactic. The abuser is just using everything they're using as to control over another person. And to be that person and be so controlled and confused, and you don't know what to believe, and then you don't know if you believe yourself anymore. And it becomes well, what do I think? Oh, I don't know. You become like a shell. And I watched this person become a shell. And that's why I was so interested in this, because I was that person who gave them the ultimatum. I was a jerk. If you go back, I can't talk to you anymore, just because it upset me. And I was triggered, and I can't imagine what that person really felt. And it was really nice to hear from you ladies today to get that perspective, because I just couldn't, my brain couldn't get there. So thank you for that. And it would probably make it a lot easier in that situation years ago for myself. But the thing that I wanted to touch on was as a friend from the outside looking in, when is the point that you do step in? Like when you see bruises, when their child tells you things, like when is there an appropriate time for someone else to interject into that?
I'm lucky because I didn't have any children with him. And I do want to say as well that there is a very real aspect of boundaries being from the outside looking in. And I definitely don't want to be the person who's like, yeah, keep putting yourself in front of that train and letting it roll over you. Like sometimes there's really a need to put in that boundary and remove yourself, because it is so messy and there's so many crazy energies that are being plastered everywhere, and largely the ones that do try to get close can start getting pitted against and or brought into the web of lies. But that's a very intriguing question, and I would love if people want to comment on this as well, because I don't know that there's a catch-all answer for when or if you should step in, or I think we could dive into that for a while. Patricia, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Planting seeds. All you can do is plant seeds. That's all you can do. You can plant seeds and be there. And that's it. Really, honestly, just those little seeds, food for thought, and leave it with them and let them mull it over and come to their own conclusions. And then when they want to talk, just listen. And when you have a chance, when they're talking, how did you feel when that happened? How did you feel when that happened? Were you, and this is where, it's all shadow work. It's all shadow work. How did you feel? Not how did that make you feel? How did you feel? Because we choose to feel. We're not made to feel. We choose to feel a certain way. We choose to be angry. We choose to be sad. We choose to be happy. It's a choice. And that's a really difficult concept to grasp and apply, because we love to blame others. We love to blame others for everything. So
easy.
It's easy. It is. It's so easy because, I don't need to do any shadow work. I don't have any shadow work to do. It's not my fault. Oh, yes, it is. Like, man, I chose to stay. And I chose to stay because I didn't want to let go of my family. I didn't want to let go of my home. I didn't want, and I had to let go of everything. And I mean, we just got legally separated like a couple of weeks ago. It's been 8 years. And again, I had to let go of all the back alimony. I'm never going to see it. He doesn't have it anyway. I let go of all future alimony. I gave him the Corvette. I gave him his pension. I don't care anymore. I just need to move on with my life, and I needed to let go. And since I've let go of all of that, oh my God, and I'm living in alignment, everything is coming. A job came to me. Money comes to me. A new man came to me. And he's his own shadow work, but anyway, that's okay, because I recognize it this time, right? And I'm right there, and I'm just pushing everything right back at him. And I'm like, oh, no, this is yours. So it's so much easier now, and I get to be the cowboy, and this is when being a cowboy is fun. I'm a school bus driver. I'm going to a school this afternoon, and I have some stuff that I'm pushing back onto a teacher. Like, that's my next thing today is like, oh, no, I don't have to be here at 20 after 1. I don't have to be here till 1:30. just because you dismiss your class early doesn't mean that I have to take it. You're responsible till 1:30. And so I've learned to just not accept what is unacceptable and to say that's not acceptable to me. And that's it, and walk away and not have an argument and not get into that trap and just say that's unacceptable. Period.
I think Patricia brought up some really, really good points, and really seeing that from both, Jennica and Patricia, as far as what it's like to go through that process. So when she said planting seeds, to me, that's key. That is the key right there, to plant the seeds. And you've got to be really kind of sensitive to what the seeds are, right? What you're planting and how you're saying it. It's like, I noticed this, or, like, how did you feel about this? Or just even kind of asking for the next courageous step to have a space to step into. And I'm talking about courageous step, meaning allowing somebody to voice something that they normally wouldn't. Like, I have a girlfriend that is in a couple of really dicey situations, and she just every time will preface it, I don't want to speak poorly about him. I don't want to speak poorly. Like, I don't want you to hate him, kind of idea. And I'm like, that's not what, even if I'm saying that, I don't feel that way. Let me tell you, like, that's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing you. It's not going to make me hate him. I just want to hear you. Just being able to reinforce that opens up the ability for her to step in and say, well, here's what's going on, because I had that. I've been able to, kind of preload that by saying, I'm not going to take this information and turn it against you, because that is part of the experience. That is part of that abuse, where even trying to be authentic and express ideas and thoughts gets flipped on you so fast that it might be really, really powerful to do that kind of listening, but create that environment where it's like, what worries you most about telling me how you're feeling right now? I mean, my girlfriend is like, she's just very much like, I just don't want you to hate him. Like, like, she's so in that space that's an easy one for me to actually identify, because then she's popped that in there, which helps me, as I'm listening, know how to support her better. Know that her biggest fear in that conversation is me hating, her husband or whatever it is. And it just kind of also informs me on how entangled this whole thing is, even inside of her. Right. Mm-hmm. But to be able to listen to somebody when they come in and say, I think I might be in an abusive situation, and to be able to sit there instead of saying, well, my gosh, you finally woke up to that. Wow, thank God. Now what do we do? Let's get you out of there, because that's your version of what they should do. Yeah. The thing that needs to be said, I believe, is just sitting there quietly, even though the inside is just like, you're right, let's get you out,
Yeah.
And just say, well, what does that mean to you? Because I might be thinking that abuse looks like this, and they might be thinking abuse looks like that. So just even asking, well, why do you think that? What is it that's happening that, like, brought that comment forward? Just really encouraging the draw out. And the more that anybody speaks about what their experience is, the more they're able to see it themselves. Because like what Patricia said, nobody was going to point it out to her. She discovered it on her own, taking courses. Nobody could tell, Jennica, as you were saying, nobody's pointing it out to you and saying, oh my gosh, look at this. Because what that does, it just puts up more walls. Oh, well, you're not trustworthy. Oh, I can't come to you because you're immediately going to hate my husband, or whatever it is. It's a really, really, it's a tender place. It's a place that needs to be honored. And again, like your question before is like, well, like what Jennica says, hey, I don't want to see you throw yourself in front of that train anymore. That's actually a really good comment. It's like, wow, based on what you're saying here, I've noticed the same things, and I would really hate for you to throw yourself in front of that train more. To me, that phrase is actually really indicative of what you would be seeing, like, this is really violent. And maybe even that comment gives that individual a whole different orientation. It's like, wait, I'm stepping in front of a train versus, oh, I was just thinking that maybe it was like a slap on the wrist occasionally. You know what I'm saying? So really kind of being aware of being able to frame something from an outsider's view is great, but not telling them how it is for them is going to be key, I think.
Yeah. It's a little it's interesting to reflect back on even just that comment of like, I don't want you to hate him, because there's a whole world, there's a whole web behind that she's trying to prevent. It's not simply about just hating him or not. There's so many triggers built behind that basically from, when I would say the exact same thing, it's largely was trying to state and create a safe place without, in a simplistic way, because trying to go into the mess of all of it just keeps spinning and outside of, it keeps tipping your reality upside down and throwing it around, and it keeps you very off kilter. But the not hating the partner, I mean, there's still a level of love and trust and commitment and or desire to be there with that person. So here I'm going to state this to make sure that you can still see that you're not going to just throw, swing over to this left-hand side or whatever and go, no, you need to leave him, which is where the majority of the population or the people that surround us go to because of the lack of understanding. It's just, look how terrible he treats you, you need to leave him, or she, or whatever. And just prefacing with the, I just don't want you to hate him, takes that off of the table. It takes needing to try and lie or make up what it is we talked about, which you're gonna get caught in anyway. It prevents a fight from the beginning. It prevents him or her from trying to then cut you off and single you out as someone who's a threat to the relationship. It really is this box of like, can we just take off of the table that he's the problem and listen to me and help me here and now, right? Because I'm not ready to see that he's the problem. And even if I can a little bit, the majority of me is not on board with that. So we're trying to navigate it very carefully without letting one stone tip and the whole thing crumbles. And we're not ready for that kind of a breakdown. I mean, really, one of the things that Patricia said that really stood out to me was, I can't remember the words exactly, but when you leave, like, you lose everything. You lose everything, regardless of what it looks like on paper. I don't care, because it largely is mental. You lose it all, and you have to be ready for it. You have to be ready to leave all connections you've made, all friendships you've made. I mean, family, friends, whatever it may be, possessions, money, any sort of security, the love that you worked so hard to keep or get or feel like you had for a moment. Like, there's so much that you have to be ready to just walk away from. I mean, you're essentially completely naked and vulnerable and in the dark, and you're hoping that someone on the other side is going to be there to hold your hand. And even that is extremely threatening and scary, because you don't know if you can trust them, because you're still in a space where you can't trust yourself. And
but vulnerability is not a weakness. It's our greatest strength.
But
we've been programmed to believe
feel like that a lot of
it's a weakness. It's not. And we've also been programmed to believe that, oh, this is the love of my life. This is the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. We don't know that. We have contracts with many people over a lifetime. Some are meant to last forever, and some are only meant to be a short time. These people come into our lives to help us learn the lessons we need to learn to be able to do what it is we came here to do. And that may be the reason they came here, was to push us. And once we've learned that, then that contract is over, and we have to accept that, because you know what? There's always something much bigger and so much better waiting for us if we just let go of what we're in. That's the only way I can explain it. The universe always gives us bigger and better, always. We just have to believe it.
That's a really beautiful sentiment. And there's another sentiment that I saw here, Sandra LeBlanc. She left us a really nice comment saying this is a lovely, difficult conversation for some. And fortunately for her, she hasn't had to experience this in her 33 years of marriage. But she did mention that going through the inner child healing will help with these blocks. And I find no matter what subject we talk about, a lot of it comes back to the good old inner child healing. And I've got to say, it is one of my favorite subjects because I still have so much to do on my own of that. But it's kind of a nice reminder to other people that it's saying like, hey, you're in this situation, but it's not your fault. Don't think you brought this into your life. Don't think you deserve it. Don't think any of that stuff. And if there's anybody out there watching today, or if anyone sees this in the future, like, this isn't like our little space is a place of no judgment, and the rest of the universe deep down is a place of no judgment either. You don't ask for these things to happen to you. These lessons are really hard sometimes, but you're going to get out of it. It's going to be okay. Yeah. That's what I come back to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was the largest lesson from healing from this relationship, and gleaning all those little gold nugget lessons of everything it was teaching me in hindsight when I was finally able to glean the clarity. That's 100% where it took me back to, right back to childhood, right back to that moment where I decided that I was not worth the time or love or affection without needing to earn it, without needing to prove myself. I mean, the plethora of things, but just back to that little girl who just wanted love for who she was. And here I am, a full-on adult in a relationship, begging and pleading and just just brutalizing myself for love that was promised and rarely given. And yeah, the root of it was searching for something outside of myself to be given to me, because I wasn't giving it to myself. I didn't believe that I was deserving of it, so I was waiting for someone to give it to me to then prove that I was worthy, and it's backwards. It's always giving it to yourself first. And I gotta tell you, I mean, as Patricia's talking about, there's always something better on the other side. There is. After I was able to go through the inner child healing and find those specific blocks that were not allowing me to fully receive love from myself, getting through and doing that healing brought me my husband today, who is the most kind, genuine, loving person who will put anyone before him at the drop of a hat. I mean, there's no end to the love that his heart gives me, and there's no condition based upon it. It just is because it is. The power of doing your shadow work, of finding out what it is that is missing within you that you need to give yourself, is the most powerful form of magic I think there is. It brings miracles, and you're right, it's always this or better. And if you're willing to believe that you're worth more, that there is more on the other side, that there can be something better, you'll find it. Absolutely, it will happen. You just have to trust that more than anything else, and trust your own intuition and instincts. They're always right, even if it takes you a little longer than what you might like in retrospect.
25 years.
The cool thing is that it always does come back. I mean, it sounds like it's it's messy and it's painful, and sometimes, like it's full of doubt, that self journey of really coming to that other side. But the thing about being on that other side is that it is a process, and it does come within. It does come from within yourself, and to be able to speak to that and continue to encourage yourself to like look back, and even if it's 10 minutes ago, and go, wow, that was a really difficult choice for me to not say that, or not agree this time, or recognize this other thing. That is such that also needs to be part of this whole thing. But I am a big fan also of the inner child work and the shadow work. To me, it's the same thing. The shadow work is the inner child work, because the inner child holds all the shadows and all the stories and has all the answers. And in all honesty, this emancipation into, or initiation into yourself, this is the whole secret behind knowing who you are, is actually knowing who you are. And you have all of that within you, and really being able to start at little places or big places is part of really just recognizing, where you have your strengths, where you're being abused, what your boundaries are, what boundaries are in the first place, what kind of support is there. And as that support transitions, I mean, you may need somebody just to sit and listen to you and kind of like, commiserate and really just be angry with you. And then you need another friend that just listens and doesn't let you get away with that. And you need somebody else just to hold your hand where you can get distracted and do something else. Like allowing all of that to be there. And the part of that Jennica pointed out to is that when you're in that situation of a very abusive, domestically abusive, like relationship, your friend groups gets very narrow, and it's kind of like you step into that willingly, because it's like, well, my friends, your friends, my friends, your friends. You really have this, I want to be part of this community, and so then that also keeps you locked there, because where is it that you get to express yourself, right? And so cutting that part of you off, or not having the ability to explore that, is probably something to look at, because when you do leave, as you get to that place, it is true. You lose everything. You lost your friends. You lost your connections. You lost a soft place to land. And having that available for somebody, for anybody, the thing that I'm trying to create and trying to actually say here is we are capable. Each one of us are capable, and in really like living our own lives in a very empowered way. And that capability needs to be recognized, but the capability is also going back to that shadow work and back to that inner child work, and hearing some really difficult things like what Jennica talked about. It was sourced in this little child, this little daughter, this little girl that just wanted to be loved. That was the root of driving this relationship that lasted for 3 years, that started in an attractive way and ended in a way that
I was gone.
As attractive. Say that again.
In the way that I was gone.
Exactly.
Completely lost myself.
Yeah.
But then found my strength.
I came across something that I think is very, very powerful. Someone sent it to me and I printed it. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but I would love to read it. It's very, very emotional. I think it will strike a chord with everyone. And it's actually a prayer for men, not just men, women as well, who are unaware, but it's designed for men. And it goes, "Dear men, we miss you deeply. When women gather together in circles, we tell stories of how much we long for you, crave you, pray for you to rise and meet us here. We mourn your missing presence in our childhoods, in the homes we built without you, in our beds. We hold hands and beg God to set you free from whatever keeps you from standing at our sides, right here, here in intimacy, in integrity, in wholeness, in freedom. The places where you are caught in dishonesty, shame, fear, addiction, we grieve and rage over. We see your pain and we see your power. We miss you. We love you. We can't wait for you to come home. For the men who have, thank you so much. Please call your brothers, start men's circles, show them the manuals. Tell them of what you gave up, of your brokenness and acceptance, of what it truly means to take up the mantle of protector. Please, there aren't enough fathers, resources, and leaders for men to sit at the feet of. The women have tried. We can't do it. The restoration must come from within the masculine. The feminine cannot mother grown men into wholeness. We cannot strap men to our backs and walk. We tried. We bow out, not gracefully, but in mournful acceptance nonetheless. And we will wait for you to burst free from the shackles patriarchy has placed on you. We pray, we pray, we pray for the great awakening.
Thank you.
I think it's pretty much says it all.
Well, as we close out this vidcast, I've been so grateful for everyone in participating. Melissa, did you have any final comments before we close down?
I'd like to send out a little extra thanks to Sandra and Janice for joining us today. And a big thanks to you ladies for being so extremely vulnerable with your feelings and your stories and your information. I know there's a lot of people out there who are really going to get a lot out of this, because there's not a lot of that understanding information out there. It's usually just, here, go to this place or call this number. And it's so cold and impersonal and not at all what is going to help any type of situation. It's because, I mean, I resort back to, do you remember the kids' help phone?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the 1-866? I almost still remember it, because I remember it. I remember thinking I needed it. I remember wanting to call. I remember just struggling a lot as a kid and just being so scared. And I remember, I think I dialed it once, and as soon as someone picked up, I hung up, because it's like, oh my God, and no one can know what I'm going through. Now, looking back, it was silly, like elementary school crap. But I think there needs to be another way out there. So I hope that if anyone is suffering or anyone is finding themselves in these situations, please reach out. And if it's easier to speak to a stranger, like a lot of us tell everything to our hairdresser because it's that impartial sounding board and we all love it so much. It's just, yeah, please reach out. Like my door's open, my phone line's there, Pine Tree Path Wellness, look me up, find someone to talk to, because there's always going to be someone to talk to.
Absolutely. And I'll say the same. Please reach out. You can always, just message me on any of the socials. We can do a chat like this, but a little bit more personal. There's so many nuances and so many complex factors and levels that you're navigating as you're going through this, and it's one that many unfortunately understand. But we are so happy that you've joined us. Please share it. I know that there's so many people who will benefit from this as well. So be on the lookout for our next vidcast episode. It's going to be next Wednesday, same time. And we hope to see you there as well. And until then, take wonderful care. Thank you so much.